she died when she was it was a big mystery when she died because Millie was telling me afterwards that there was a big controversy that Mother didn't know that until she was already buried.
Whoa.
There was some, I don't know what was the whole story.
So Grandma didn't get to go to her own mother's funeral.
Right. And there was a
Wow.
little bit of controversy, yeah, because she'd had a stroke back there, and then they brought her out here because the sisters up in Redwood City
Yep.
were taking turns taking care of Grandma. But Mother was down here. And I didn't know this at the time, but evidently it's because Mother wasn't going up there regularly enough, they felt like. I remember when I went up there for Dick's wedding,
Dick's wedding?
my Betty's
Oh.
brother. I think that was the one I went up for. I'm trying to get a time schedule. It might not have been. I don't remember exactly. But anyway, I know we were up in Redwood City, and I spent a lot of time with Betty. We went over to Bakersfield. Betty and I went over to Bakersfield to visit another friend of theirs that, well, they were the ones that had the Salad Bowl restaurant that I talked about in Bakersfield. And evidently, Mother, from what Millie told me, now this is a story Millie told me, and I don't know how much credibility, but anyway, evidently it was while after Grandma had her stroke, Grandma was sick. They had all been taking care of her. Mother and I went up there to spend some time to visit, and the girls went off and left Mother to take care of Grandma because they figured it was her turn, but without letting Mother know that this was going to happen. And it was while Betty and I were in Bakersfield. So Mother was left there all by herself taking care of Grandma. And then I guess she had recovered from that or something, but anyway, I don't know for sure, but I know that then she went back east and got a stroke while she was back there, and that's when she died.
But the girls were mad at Grandma.
They were mad at Mother because she hadn't been spending enough time. And you know, and I can see now, caregivers get stressed. Look at the way Hazel was when she was taking care of Grandma Ball. She made everybody mad at her because she figured her brothers never spent any time over there helping her, and her, you know, and that's when she and Edna Zusby had to blow up. I mean, it's just a stress thing. The main caregiver tends to feel very put on, you know, looking for help, and whether the others are helping or not, it doesn't seem like it. It's the way it usually turns out. We've talked about this in support group a lot too, but and I'm sure that that's what was going on up there. But by the same token, you know, Mother kind of got the short end of the deal on that too. But anyway, that's all I know about it. I just know that there was that.
And she's buried up in Redwood City, I believe.
She's
I saw
buried.
Byron was had passed away up there.
He did. Yeah, they were both cremated, and they're both in a mausoleum up there.
In Redwood City.
Redwood City. And so that's where we went up for my grandfather's funeral when I was only about a year old or so. Obviously.
William. So you don't know Byron. You're talking about actually Byron. Yeah, he died in 1934. So
Yeah.
I just saw that.
And that's
Just
when
looking
Mother
at
said that Grandma used to talk about the fact that I was singing all the time.
You're a year old
That
and you're
little-
singing.
Yeah, I was that little baby that sang, just cheered everybody up.
Oh.
I'd look at Brianna or, you know,
Yeah.
and Bree would have been that kind of.
Yeah.
And that's what the Mother always talked about, the fact that Grandpa was cremated, and Mother was an adult at that time.
Right.
But she would wake up in nightmares about the cremation.
Really?
So you didn't even mention a cremation around Mother. You know, it's just very,
I wonder why that was something that would have scared her.
but it was something that It really bothered her.
Did she have any fires in her life that you know of?
The only fire I know of was the one when Smith's Market burned down right behind our house.
Where were you at?
In L.A., the house that we lived in until I was 6, the house on Orchard Avenue. Where our house was, there was a little alley behind us, and then Smith's Market, which faced onto Washington, is right there.
So you guys, the back end of yours and the back end of theirs shared the alley?
Yeah, the alley was where all their truckers came in, where all their supplies came in. And I was sleeping in the back bedroom at that time. Usually I had the front bedroom, it was mine, but I was sleeping in Millie's bed for some reason that night. And the store burned down during the night. And they all laughed about the fact that I slept through it. But yet I was scared to death of fire for a long time after that. I was absolutely, to the point that we went to see a Laurel and Hardy movie where they would do like this to light a cigar and the flame would come out of his thumb.
Mm-hmm.
They had to take me out of the theater because I was screaming so loud.
Wow. You probably didn't really sleep through all of it. You must have subconsciously...
Either it was the shock of waking up and seeing it all burned down the next morning, or something during the night, that I had just blocked it out,
right.
or something anyway. But I had that little fear of fire for...
The Grandma Keck did too. So of course she's not cremated,
No.
and neither is your dad, obviously, because
No,
she wouldn't have allowed that.
They're all down the road.
Whittier.
Goodyear, across the road from where Millie was buried. Don's planning on being cremated. He's already got everything set up. His urn is in the closet. Make sure you know where my urn is.
And it looks like the urn that's in the movie Cleopatra, because he just watched it the other night. He just watched the night before and realized it looked the same. He's laughing about that.
He's asking me today on the phone what plans I've made. And I better get something done.
I think that maybe this fall and what you're going through has made him a little more aware. If something had happened when he'd fallen day before yesterday, it would have had been a 911 call to get him to go to the hospital or whatever, so maybe he's realizing. Maybe it's just making him think about it right now.
He goes into these panic modes. It's not really a panic attack, but it's a panic mode, kind of. All these things that have to be done, and what's going to happen to this, and how are we going to do this, and I've got all this stuff I've got to do, and I've got all that. I can't do this, I can't do that because I've got to do this, and I haven't got room to do this because I haven't done that. And that's what he was going through today on the phone.
I wish I could get him into a mood where he would talk, even record some of his stories. Like he was saying the other day about taking the camera up onto the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
I mean, with the mountain climbing clasps so he can climb up there and getting an okay from the city to do it, and holding a 16mm camera taking pictures.
He was always part monkey. They used to laugh at him anytime there was anything going on. Even at the over at the church in the gymnasium, if they had string lights or anything, Don was the one who would climb up to do it.
Really?
Well, yeah, in junior high school, Don was 10 years ahead of me. I went to Brenda. He went to Brenda. They built the auditorium, and Don and Millie were there. And the way our auditorium was built, the stage wasn't very much bigger than over at your church.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can picture right down the middle of the ceiling from the stage to the back, a little closed-in, like a vent type thing that they could climb through, crawl through.
Okay.
That's what they used for the lighting. That's where they would crawl through to, and in various little spots along there was where the lights were. Well, Don was one of those, he was going there at the time, but he was going to go into help that worked on that.
Well, I doubt he weighed more than 100 pounds, and
Yeah,
he was
he
small,
has
and he was
weight.
agile, so
Yeah.
it made sense for him to be one of the ones. And he was, of course, lighting was his specialty.
And that was his special even in junior high, and even.
He was probably even smaller than that, junior high. I didn't think about that.
Well, because he was building those miniature stages up there when he was in junior high.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you figure, I was only 6 when we moved out of that house.
He would have been 16.
He would have been 16, yeah. And I remember many times when the kids were at school, going upstairs and sneaking into his room and looking at his miniature stages. That fascinated me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that he put up another one, fireplace, mantle, because when we had come down before, when James and I were down here with you guys and we were cleaning up, he had asked me to take down the snow, the Christmas scene. Well, when I was up there the other day, I noticed he had
Oh, he's got
a fireplace
Ophelia.
with mantle.
He's got Ophelia up there.
Is that what it is?
Yeah,
It's a puppet,
Ah.
puppet stage, yeah.
Okay.
Puppet stage.
this one that, I had it, where did I buy it? I bought it. I bought it at Kevin's.
It's Olivia, isn't it?
It's Olivia.
Yeah. She's the little popular kids storybook character.
Oh, okay. I remember you guys talking about the puppet
Yeah.
stages. I didn't know that's what it was.
And what it is the book opens out and forms the stage.
Yeah.
And then the back of the box, like it has a drawer, and it's got the backdrops and the curtains and the
Oh.
little characters. You can have a split in the floor that the little characters.
Come out too.
And I was telling them about it. I bought it, and I was telling them about it. He wanted to see it, so I showed it to him at one time. Didn't want to see it again, so I just took it over there after he got it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
I just took it over there and set it up.
Oh, that's why it's up. Okay.
That's why it's up.
It looked like when I was going through, because I wasn't standing in there too much, but when I was going through there, it looked like a fireplace to me.
Yeah, I can see where it was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's the stage.
Yeah,
The
it makes
theater-
sense as you say it.
The theater comes out. Fireworking lessons are starting.
Sunday afternoon?
But yeah, that's working out.
What was the name of that? He called Fox something else, something Gulch. You said it yesterday.
Gower Gulch.
Gower?
Gower Gulch. It's
Because it was
the
on
corner of
Gower.
Gower Avenue and Sunset, I think it is. Sunset and Gower. And that was the pet name for the studio. It was always 20th, but that was what they called it.
Gower Gulch.
Gower Gulch. There
Well,
are always people there, you know.
Well, was it Rick or Debbie was talking about, there's always Sunday dinners. You and I were talking about this too. I think it was
always.
one
The
of
family always gathered on Sundays.
And it wasn't
it was the
all,
whole
it wasn't
family.
just family.
Friends and
Friends would come, people from church.
At Grandma Pitts'
at
house.
Grandma
It was
Pitts'
always her house.
There was always a crowd of people. I love it because I've used it so often for a picture of the church. Because you would come and, as kids would be running all through the house and everything, but you could go from room to room to room. There were groups of people talking and enjoying. There would be uncles and nephews wrestling on the front lawn. There would be people sitting on the front porch talking politics. Women talking other things in the kitchen.
all the women would end up in the kitchen.
Women always ended up in the kitchen, so they were everywhere. All these different groups of people everywhere, and every so often one would move from one spot to another spot, and so there was all this interacting going on. And as a little kid running through there, it was just such a wonderful feeling to know that all these people were connected to me, and that this was, and to me it's a beautiful picture of the church.
Yeah.
It's family. Everybody's there doing their own thing, but they're also all there together.
I do remember some gatherings. I don't know. I always thought there was some special occasion, and maybe that's
By the time you were around,
It probably was.
Leslie was.
But I remember the same type of feeling. But wherever you went, you were welcomed into whatever
Yeah,
they were doing.
exactly.
It wasn't like you were just bothered or something. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, Victoria, come on over, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And, they were sort of teasing you or, you
Yeah. Yeah,
of it.
no matter where you went or what was going on. Yeah.
And chairs would appear out of nowhere and line the walls.
Yeah, yeah. Everybody was welcome.
Well, you know, it was so common to have so many people there, and I've told this before Debbie was born. We went over there after church one day, and we saw George and Aunt Coke on the front porch, and we're talking to them, and Louie and Ruth were there, and pretty soon Betty and Aunt Wilma and all of them showed up when they, you know, and it was just all so, you know, so common, I didn't think anything of it until my mother and my sister showed up. And then we walked in the house and it was a baby shower.
For you.
For me.
But it didn't, yeah.
And it didn't even, it was a total surprise, but it didn't ring a bell that all these people were there because that was so common.
Yeah.
And Grandma Ma always had her electric skillet full of fried chicken going.
Oh, gosh, really?
Always, sitting in the middle of the kitchen table, this electric skillet, and it had a glass top so you could watch the chicken frying in it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that so well. Yeah, that's just the way the house was.
Yeah,
And then there,
that just blew my mind. I mean, there's all these people there, people from church, people from family, from different sides of the family, and aunts, uncles, cousins, and friends and neighbors, and then my family started showing up, and I thought, this is unusual. You know, it doesn't usually work.
Yeah.
And
Baby shower.
the baby shower.
That house on Kingsley was so cool.
it was the best house ever.
I never got to know about or where the hidden tunnels were from room to room. But Doug and Chris used to go through. Chris lived there, and he grew up there.
You go into the closets of the bedrooms, and there was a door at the back of the closet wall.
Was it just a
It
small
was
half door?
Kind of a half door,
Okay.
yeah. And, yeah, you could go in and go through all in and out, and,
Isn't that crazy?
yeah. I never got more than a few feet in. I wouldn't go any farther than
Yeah.
that, but the boys were everywhere in there.
Oh, yeah, they could go from room to room. Because it would go through the eaves. You know, the eaves of the house were like this, well, the walls were like this, well, there was that little space.
Did you have to crawl, or
You had to,
Oh, they would run through there. I remember them running through there, so there must have been areas that were...
well, you figure the wall goes like this is your full bedroom wall, the roof comes down like this.
and it was up against the wall?
And it was between the
Okay.
wall and the outside of the roof. And it was the ceiling was slanted, but it was that little space in there. Our house on Orchard that I grew up in, the one on Orchard that we moved out of when I was 6, it was like that too. And because I used to run around in that way. But
So it was pretty common.
what I remember about that house on Orchard, though, was our Halloween party. Talk about Halloween. It couldn't have been, I wasn't in school yet. But Mom and Dad invited the church down for a Halloween party. They were in charge, all the classes at church, the marrieds and the middle-aged and the seniors, and all had their Friday night of a month that they had their gathering.
Mhm.
Well, it was in Mother's and Dad's class, and they decided to sponsor it that time, and I was so little, I don't know what the story was on that, but they had it at our house. Dad, being the artist that he was, he had it set up so that they didn't come in the front door. Everybody went down, was led to walk down the driveway, through the backyard where he had the incinerator and back all covered like a ghost, they had the backyard like a graveyard type thing.
Mhm.
And then you go on into the house and go up the back steps. There was an outside staircase. They went to the upstairs. He had the whole hallway in the upstairs that he brought home from work, these life-size paintings, the luminous paint of skeletons. And on black oilcloth. And the whole hallway was lined with
Skeletons.
with these skeletons, and you'd walk through those, and then you came down the stairs into the living room, and that's where the party was.
Mm.
After that party, I would not go upstairs in our house ever again.
Oh, funny.
I never went back upstairs unless my brother or sister took me up there,
Yeah.
but I would go to the first landing, and that's it. No,
Skeletons were up there.
Go further. And I remember sitting on Annie's lap in the corner of the dining room all that whole night. I wasn't going anywhere.
I mean, those old houses were great for things like that. Remember at Grandma's house, lots and lots of nights of telling ghost stories.
Oh, yeah.
Trish was the best
Oh,
at
she was
telling
great at
ghost
telling ghost
stories.
stories.
Really?
Oh my goodness. And
Scared you to death, huh?
yeah, she'd gather all of us littler ones around and she'd tell ghost stories, bloody bones and
Yeah.
Grandma was pretty good at ghost stories too, and Uncle
Yeah.
Mac, of course. And Uncle Mac would turn out the lights and he'd sit on the middle of the floor and he'd tell those stories.
Don and Millie used to, when Mother and Dad would go to church on Sunday nights, and they were babysitting, they would turn out all the lights in the house and turn on, because Sunday night was when the mysteries were on the radio. The Inner Sanctum with the Creepy Door, and I Love a Mystery, and all these, you know. I would be petrified. I would be under the bed.
Under the bed, that's where the monsters live. I don't know.
I used to get a kick out of me being so scared of.
We had some pretty good Halloween dress-up things at our house in Napomo, too. Have the kids come up on the porch and look through the windows at
Oh,
the
gosh,
rooms
yeah.
that we set up. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And then the first Halloween there in Napomo, I believe it was, where we shipped all of us over to the Russells and you guys had a big party. And we sat and watched at the Russells with Lawton and, I think it was Lawton and George watching us. Young George. We sat and watched, I don't know if it was Twilight Zone, but it was one of those movies, or one of those shows, and it had a movie, or a show about a doll that kept coming to life and people kept dying, and this doll was
pretty.
a little girl, and its name was Kathy. Talk about being that was another one of the, you remember the Russell's house?
Which one was the Russells?
It was the big old white house that was on the road between Dana and Grandview 3. It's like you go over the hill, there's a big old white house.
Yeah.
Right there.
Okay,
That was the Russell's house.
okay.
And yeah, it was
Scary.
very scary. Yeah.
That was an old house, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that must have been a precursor to Chucky. I always thought it was wrong that they were these dolls as a scary thing.
Yeah.
Dolls and clowns and puppets, and those were.
Well, Halloween was just always a time to be very creative. I mean, I don't know, the trick or treat, scary, you know, but it was always a time to be creative and make something and see what we can come up with in the house, go for a treasure hunt. So we can use this, we can do that.
From the earlier days, like the movie last night. I remember my dad talking about stealing the outhouse and leaving the outhouse.
That's been in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Had to have been.
How old was he when he moved there? Do you know? Do you know?
No, I don't know. All I know is that he was born in Normandy and was raised, that's what he said, and he was raised in Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Because the census reports, I don't have anything. During that 12 years, I have him because, you know, there are no 1890 census really around. So, I don't know. Oh, first one I have
I
is
don't know either, but I know Dad
1900.
and John and John's brothers used to play golf, particularly Dad and John.
So the Jeffreys lived
Jeffreys.
there also.
Yeah, they always were nearby, whether they lived right there, or whether they got together for holidays. I know that Dad and John
We're like brothers.
were like brothers.
Yeah.
There was Harry, Bob, Little.
Now,
There
whose
was
kids
another-
were these?
Aunt Lula's children.
Aunt Lula, but she's the one whose name is on the picture.
Yeah. That was,
Grandpa's dad. I mean, sister.
his
No.
sister. His
That one's sister.
that one's sister.
Yeah, Grandpa's dad's sister. His Aunt Lula.
Yeah. I remember her. She took care of her. She was kind of a Grandma Mall type character. And I picture her a lot the same build and everything as Grandma Mall, and she used to come over the house. She she made those little wood fiber flowers that feel so real. You know, the real soft, the petals feel real.
Mm-hmm.
She made those.
Oh.
And I had a corsage, a wedding corsage. She made me a wedding corsage with white roses. It had at least half a dozen roses in it
Wow.
that she made for me.
Wouldn't that be cool to still have that somewhere?
And I wish I still had that. I think that got lost when we got moved. And every time we moved,
Something got lost, left behind.
the last load never got moved.
It was
always-
cool.
Yeah, the last load was always left behind. Because we were gonna go back the next day to get it, and that didn't happen.
It was more family stuff that way,
Yeah.
or stuff in general. Our last move was always the garage, and James never forgot that. Yeah.
That's the difference. Your dad wasn't interested in the garage, things in the garage that much.
Yeah.
But, yeah. But anyway,
How did she make those, or what? Was that something she did as a business, or just?
it was a hobby for her. I think she probably sold some of them. When I was working at the bank when we first got married, there was one of the ladies down there that used to make them. She'd come in with big boxes full of these corsages. And you can buy the stuff at the craft stores, and you buy the different petals. And then you put them together, and they make very lifelike.
Oh, great.
They're beautiful.
So Aunt Lula was at Jeffries, and John was her son that was close to Grandpa's age, is that right?
Yeah,
They're the ones that came to California together.
that's right.
Don't know really how they came to
I
California.
don't
They
know
were
what
here.
the whole story is, because I remember Mother saying that, I know they had relatives in the valley, because we stopped and visited some in Selma.
And in 1920, he's living in Lucerne, which is in Kings County. I don't know where that is. I mean, I don't know where Lucerne is, but that was in the 1900 census. That's where Grandpa Kemp was living with his family. Up in the valley somewhere.
Yeah, but West
Mhm.
Valley. Down, it's really sad.
So he obviously was there, and then he went from there. Oh, but you said something
So
about...
what I think is that, what Mother had made, just a slight comment at one time, that the family had lived up there too. So evidently John and, I know that John and Dad came out here to find work to support, because they were both in a position to support their families.
He would have been 13 that year.
And so they came out here to, quote, make their fortune and get the and then bring the families out here.
13 they were.
Wow.
No, he wasn't, right?
And so then that's when the rest of the families migrated out here. And I also know that Grandma and Grandpa had the property in Bell, so when they bought that, I don't know.
Yeah.
And Aunt Lula lived up near she lived right across the street from the Angelus Temple when I knew her. Aunt Lula.
Where's the Angelus Temple?
The Boyle Heights area of LA.
I'm sorry, what height?
Boyle Heights area.
Boyle Heights?
It's East LA. It's probably not too far from here. I'm LA proper though.
Reminds me, talking about East LA. The only time I can remember doing this, we were driving, Dad and you were driving around pointing, I think you were with us. It was pointing to all the places that we kind of gotten Dad and Connie, I believe, at the airport. I think we were driving down East LA, and he was pointing out, this is where we lived, and this is where that lived, and that room right there is where your mother and I were at when the guy broke in and grabbed your mother's leg. And,
That was at Mother's house.
right.
Yeah,
What house was that? What street?
that was the house on New England.
That was it green? Well, it was green when we saw it. I don't know.
It was white in New York.
Doug was like, let's just go, Dad. He's slowing down. Doug said people were honking and, making hand gestures at him because Dad was going so slow, stopping and pointing in the middle of the street. He's like, we're in East LA, Dad, let's get out of here. And it was nighttime, too.
Actually, that
Oh my, really?
Mhm, like right past the,
that wasn't in East LA, that was in Central LA.
yeah, that's where it was.
Even more so.
Yeah, it was
Watch
just
that.
past, just as the sun had just gone down.
That was between Alvarado and Vermont, and Washington Boulevard.
When Doug tells that story, he's like telling the kids, duck down, or telling Connie, just get down, just Connie was scared.
I know. The neighborhood ain't what it used to be.
Where was the Japanese garden? There was a garden that we used to, I thought it was Japanese food. Maybe it was called Japanese garden. Remember having the sake there?
It was down in Chinatown.
I only remember going there one time with a whole bunch of us with grandma kids.
It was the one that we were
Golden
talking about.
Pagoda?
Golden Pagoda, yeah.
Okay, well, why would we have gone there?
That was we did all kinds of celebrations down there.
We went there after a wedding or something.
Typical, we go after a
Oh,
wedding,
like
after,
maybe,
after Uncle Rick's graduation, after,
well, I would have been
Yeah,
somewhere
no,
between
we-
5 and 10, so.
Yeah, because the last time I remember, the one that is the most vivid to me, was after somebody's wedding or something.
So Lisa, maybe, or
Go to Lisa's wedding.
Maureen's, Rick and Maureen. I don't remember that wedding though.
no, that was up. Hacienda Heights.
Their wedding was in Hacienda Heights?
The wedding was out that way too, wasn't it? No, it wasn't either, it was at
It was at the, huh?
Music People,
Was it?
yeah, it was, I remember it was.
Oh, that's right, it was her daughter's wedding that was at like a
Gail.
Methodist church or something. Or
Is that her name?
Yeah,
Gail?
Gail.
That just came to me, so I don't know. That was right enough. Well, I remember going to that Japanese garden. It was the Golden Pagoda.
Pagoda.
It was actually down, Chinatown downtown,
And was that close to Olivera Street where we used to go?
just around the corner.
Where I used to always get the Mexican jumping beans.
Mm-hmm.
Like the 2 times I remember going, full time
Yeah.
we got the Mexican, all the time we used to always
Mexican
go
jumping
there.
beans are so cool!
They are. They were so cool. You take them to school the next day and for a
Yeah.
week they'd be jumping. The only thing I really remember about the Japanese garden, I remember walking in and I remember sitting down, I remember the hot sake. I think I probably got to taste it that night. One of the uncles.
Yeah, it would have been somewhere else.
It wouldn't have been the Golden Pagoda.
We would, the last time I remember at the Golden Pagoda, we were like in an upstairs and we had like the whole area. It was so many of us.
Well, the restaurant was built like a pagoda, and you had about 3 or 4 floors.
Oh, cool, okay. I really thought that this was called the Japanese
It
garden.
was probably, we went to.
I don't know why, but-
Yeah,
No, if it was sake, then
yeah.
Not to be Japanese.
Japanese.
There was a Japanese restaurant in South Korea that we used to go
No, this was down in Grandma.
Well,
took us
there was, we went to the Japanese gardens,
which is,
which is like the Arboretum or something, with Grandma, after Grandma Mull died.
that could be what I'm thinking of then.
Because I bought her a little deer and put it on the mantelpiece, and wrote a little.
Oh, I think I remember that. Was one of those little glass ones?
Yeah.
I think that must be what it is.
Yeah.
That must have been what
So
it
we
was.
must,
Because I know it was the Japanese garden, but I thought Japanese garden was just a restaurant. I didn't realize it was.
We went to the Japanese
And they
gardens.
have, do they have a restaurant there probably? that we
That's
stayed?
what
Okay, that's
yeah.
what it is.
probably what it was.
I was sure it was Japanese garden. Okay, it makes sense.
Mhm.
And I remember, the only thing I really remember about the Olivera Street, I remember walking on the street to be really packed, a lot of people, a lot of
Always.
vendors. I remember the Mexican jumping beans. I remember a puppet. I don't know if Doug got a puppet there maybe?
I got a puppet there
Did
one
you get
time,
there?
but I don't.
Very
know
similar
if
to
it's-
Ernest?
Yeah.
Okay. I think his name was Ernest. And I remember the Spanish lady, I don't remember if it was a Spanish lady doll or if it was just her hair and the feathers and the thing that they put in their hair, the big
The
combs that they make.
Yeah, the big cone.
Yeah, they're, made out of wood or whatever, so I don't remember why that's significant. That's all I remember about Olivera Street, those little things, flashes. My memories are visual. I remember seeing that or
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah.
I can remember,
Exactly.
I remember seeing walking into the garden, I remember seeing sitting down and somebody handing me
Yeah, I remember
something.
seeing being in the upstairs of Golden Pagoda,
Yeah.
and seeing the table and all of us around it and
Yeah.
the color of the lights around us, the lighting and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it was, okay. It was after Grandma Moll's funeral, was that what it was?
It was,
I don't remember her
it was
funeral.
sometime.
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, it was around the time of her funeral, because, what had it been afterwards, because that's why I got that for Grandma.
What was
Wrote a
significant
little
about the
note.
deer?
I don't remember, just,
But you and I probably went to, I remember someplace that had the little blown glass figures,
Mhm.
and they had the, I also used to love those little cards that would have the little ceramic dogs or
Mhm.
whatever they were. They had little
Yeah.
mice, and they had all different little things. I
Had a
really
little
love those.
skunks that came on one of those little cards.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Golden Pagoda was downtown Chinatown, and that's in the same area that that picture of your grandma's is from.
Oh, the two grandmothers and the
Yeah.
risque. That was
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
funny when I saw that the other day. It's just- And you talk about having the prim and proper grandma and the, what you call your other grandma?
What was I call her?
Grandma Kit.
Shady.
Shady. Well, I wouldn't say Grandma Pitts was shady, but I would say she was very adventuresome and a little more daring. And I never thought of Grandma Keck as being daring, but I wish I knew then what I know now about her, and we would have had different conversations. But
Mother was a feisty little soul.
I didn't know that, though. I just knew her as being, sweet and sparkling in her eyes, and I just remember her always trying to say something. She would, get her
Close
words
her
on.
eyes.
She'd close her eyes, and a little lip would get tight as she's trying to remember how to say it. Shaking her head a little bit.
And you know what? My cousin's view of Grandma is so much different than mine.
Which cousin?
Grandma Keck.
Oh.
Karen, Nancy.
Well, because they
Linda.
lived next to her. I mean,
Yeah.
they were around her all
Yeah, I
the
mean,
time.
they would make comments, well, you know how Grandma is, and...
No, we don't.
No,
Tell us what.
Grandma's just this wonderful little
Yeah.
grandma. Yeah.
Yeah, Millie's family, the girls, were very sarcastic, very judgmental on everybody. And they would pick out and look at that side of them. I know they used to bug me terribly.
Karen was the instigator of that.
Her mother was a little bit too.
Okay.
Took after her mom, huh?
Yeah. But, yeah, Karen was the one that did that the most, and she was the leader of the pack, so.
Big time.
Still is, probably.
But what kind of things would they say, or what kind of,
Just
Impressions.
that, you know how Grandma is, you know.
kind of roll your eyes and,
They never had anything nice to say about Frida. I doubt that they ever had very much nice to say about me. They had very,
I never heard them say anything negative. I remember Linda's kind of laughing and saying, well, you know how Grandma
Yeah,
is. That
yeah,
kind of-
yeah.
It's more of a,
Yeah.
we got to do, but not being mean about it. I just remember
Yeah,
kind of jokingly
exactly.
like,
Exactly.
like, okay, we got to take care of this and whatever. But we didn't. I mean, Keith probably has stories of Grandma and Walter that,
I'm sure you do.
that we don't know anything about. I mean, I remember spending a few days with Grandma and Walter. I was telling you when I was 13 that summer that I spent a few nights at Grandma Pitz's, and one night, I think it was one night with you, and then a couple nights with Grandma and Walter, and then the rest of the week with, or a week or so with Aunt Millie. And that's the year that I found out that Grandma loved Days of Our Life, because she used to watch that. No, As the World Turns.
As the World
As the World, one of the two. Which one was it?
Probably at the world.
As the World Turns, I think it was. She loved that soap opera. And Walter talked about, I loved the story of Walter talking about the turn of the century. He would have been around 13 or 14 years old, and him talking about racing their horses. And what they would do is they would take their mares that had yearlings, and they would take the mare, which one did they do? They take the mare and tie it up on one end of a pathway, a street that was just dirt, and they take the colt and to the other end, and then they would release the colt and see which coachman ran to the mare first. That's how they used to race their horses.
That's cool.
And I thought, what? How cool is that? Then he was talking about when the motor cars came, the horseless carriages came, and it was a dime to ride it around the block. People would come by with their horseless carriage, and they would charge a full dime. That was a lot of money. But just to ride it around the block. Of course, I don't know how big a block was back then, what they considered that, but he remembers. Those are the two things that I remember. And I remember watching the Twilight Zone there, because we didn't have cable. I'd come down to Los Angeles, and there'd be the TV shows and stations I never heard of before that were old, that I hadn't ever watched before, and I'd watch them and get scared watching the Twilight Zone.
Dodger baseball. Vince Scully in Dodger baseball. They never missed their Dodger baseball.
Yeah, I never knew that about them.
I
Oh,
used to laugh about that because Mother didn't know beans about baseball until she and Walter got together.
Walter loved it, so she
And
she
so
learned.
she would talk about Dodger baseball, and then after Walter was gone, never mentioned it again. I mean, that was it.
It's probably where I am with football. You know, I like football through James. You know, I don't watch football myself, but I'll watch football with him and talk about Peyton Manning and, you know, Tom Brady playing today and, you know, that type of thing. But
I had vivid pictures in my mind of the two of them sitting at their table, one on either side, and the radio right between them, listening to the Dodger game.
which location?
So I was trying to think. A yellow table. I think it was at the trailer.
The table was right in the kitchen, up
Right.
against when you first came through the door.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
I remember that.
yeah.
Yeah, and in their little house, you walked through their door, and there was a little dining area, small, like.
Yeah,
and
see,
that-
I barely remember that.
Yeah.
That was after
We
I
were
already had
moved out,
the kids.
yeah.
I mean, the kids and I would take the kids over there once in a great while, but not very often. The trailer and the house in Normandy are the ones that I remember. I do remember her apartment a little bit.
Well, she had two apartments.
Where were
One on
they?
West Boulevard that was next door to, that's probably the one you remember, next door to Mr. and Mrs. Morris.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she lived on an apartment, when you were born, she lived on an apartment up on Alexandria.
Yeah.
Before she married Walter then.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Both of those were your first.
I remember wooden floors. I can see the wooden floors because they're right there because I was little.
Because you were right there.
Yeah. I remember the back steps that looked out on, well, I guess it was probably the parking area, the garages and all. But there was a dumpster down there. So that's all I remember of them is standing at the top of the steps. And because it always reminded me of I Love Lucy. Their back steps. It reminded me of the back steps on I Love Lucy. Because that was kind of not familiar to me except through that. And
Those steps at Mother's apartment in Alexandria weren't that high because the house was right.
well, I was little.
But you were little, yeah, but see, there was.
It could have been 2 or 3 steps, it would have felt like it was
That's
huge.
what I was just trying to think, I don't remember steps in the back, but there might have been just a couple within it because.
Was she was on the ground floor?
She was on the ground floor and there was only one step up to the front door.
Huh. Interesting. But I remember the closet that we would play in because that was where the toy box, she always brought the little box of toys out. But I remember sitting in the closet and looking in the box of toys.
I remember the Tiddlywinks and Tiddlywinks, we always played. There was something else in there we always played with. It was an old doll. The box was just a small box underneath, I think, a drawer in her bedroom in the
But she
trailer.
had the bottom drawer of her dresser was full of toys and books.
I just remember the
We had,
Tiddlywinks. And,
it was a fairly good sized box when we were playing with it. It had the green wooden caterpillar. It had the bee. Oh, I loved the bee. There was a wooden pull toy with the yellow.
I remember that now,
Yeah.
okay.
It had that board that had the little slide
Yeah.
things on it, and one side was like farm things, and the other side was alphabet, I think, or numbers
Yeah,
or
you could
both.
write, you could spell words.
Yeah.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
There was a little VW bug.
I remember that. I remember a doll.
Yeah, she had two dolls. Betsy and Susie. Betsy was her really nice red-headed doll, and Susie was one that she found in the trash and cleaned up for us. Because I was there when, Debbie and I were there when Susie needed a name.
Oh, so you guys named her.
And, let's see. But Betsy wasn't in the box. Susie was in the box. Betsy was never in the box. What other? Was the Slinky Dog in there?
Did she have a Slinky
Oh,
Dog? I remember
Yeah.
a Slinky Dog. That and the bee. Yeah, I'd forgotten about both of those. The Tiddlywinks is what Doug and I used to always get and play. This was in the trailer, and we go down into the screen room and play Tiddlywinks. Did Larry come to a Thanksgiving dinner or something there? Did we have something there that Larry might have come to a dinner
Where at?
at the trailer in the screen room? I remember having a dinner.
Yeah,
down there.
we had chicken and mashed potatoes.
It was just a regular.
That was fairly early on
Yeah.
because Larry didn't know how to serve his meal as a family around the table.
Really.
Yeah. Because he asked me how he was supposed to serve the mashed potatoes on his plate.
I don't know why I remember that.
I don't remember what the occasion was.
I just remember somebody didn't like butter, and I don't remember if it was Larry.
Larry.
I said I don't remember if it was Larry or Jim, but one of them I remember. I don't, for some reason I remember thinking.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
don't like butter?
Because he asked if there was butter in the mashed potatoes, and I remember Grandma having some long answer about it.
Maybe that's why I made an impression because I don't remember any of that. I just remember. Why am I thinking of butter? Somebody didn't like butter, and there was something about
Yeah.
it. So, okay.
Yeah. And it was actually KFC that we were eating.
Okay. Maybe we were
But
just.
she had made mashed potatoes and a vegetable, and the chicken was from KFC.
Maybe they were just meeting him. Maybe that's what it was. Because it was early on. Because I remember not really knowing Larry.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that's the only time I remember eating there. While we were in the screened-in porch, the porch at first day. Weird things you remember.
It really is, isn't it? You stand out and
Yeah. Like my only memory of Santa Maria is, seeing that huge rocket and being scared and I said, okay, I'll take care of you. And then I saw it years later and it was maybe 4 or 5 foot tall. But to me, it was 30 foot tall. Because I was only, a year and a half old.
Well, that rocket was tall enough, you guys had to climb a ladder to go up to the top of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was at least as tall as the house is.
But looking at that picture that you were showing me in front of Grandma's house, and it said September of '64, I could not possibly, that cannot be what my memory is from. That must have been something that I created, or something from stories. I don't remember.
You know, as a child, you see things differently. You see
Yeah.
different things, like,
Okay, I'm talking about the steps.
yeah, Pam has memories that Debbie swears up and down are different.
I know,
memories
Debbie
of
say,
the same
I don't
thing.
know what she was thinking.
Yeah, and Debbie has memories, and I'm sure that my brother and sister and I have had different
Mhm.
viewpoints of different things too, because it's what the child is thinking and relating to at the time.
Yeah. And like I said, all my memories are visual memories. I just remember seeing this,
Yeah, most
seeing
of mine are
that.
visual.
Some people are not that way though. That was interesting when I discovered that not everybody remembers things or sees things
Yeah.
visually, that their memories are maybe audio or something smell or something.
Well, there's so many things that can trigger memories. When I first put my herb garden in the Como, I was out there pulling weeds one day, and all of a sudden it was just like, boom, I was transported back to the creek in Redwood City with my cousin.
The creek?
The creek. And Betty and I used to play down by the creek in Redwood City, and I suddenly realized I was leaving the rosemary.
Something in the
And
rosemary.
the rosemary would grow by the creek in Redwood City, and it was just the smell, just all of a sudden, I was looking at the dirt, and it was just all of a sudden, I was in Redwood City.
Wow.
At the creek.
Yeah.
And it was just the aroma of the rosemary, and having my nose right down, and my fingers in the dirt, and my nose right
Yeah.
down in it. I mean, that was the, yeah.
We were driving through Napomo not long ago in a convertible, and another one? Thank you. And I told James, smell that, that's the deal. You know, I didn't know that I was the fennel, you know.
The fennel,
The fennel. I smelled like black whipper. We used to, and it instantly took me to one of the times when I was at Chris Shaning's house, and she lived down there where the new high school is now. She lived right down there. And she had a horse, and we used to go riding together. And I remember being out in those fields across, it's not Orchard, what's it called? What's it called there? Thompson? It's called Thompson.
Thompson, yeah.
Yeah. On the other side of Thompson, closer to the foothills, walking around there was a creek down there and everything, and chewing on the fennel, the licorice. And as soon as we were driving through there and I smelled it, I instantly can remember being there with Chris, chewing on the fennel.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that hit me that day working in the garden. I just, literally, I was transported back to the creek in Redwood City.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I love Rose's Rose cartoons, or comics. Rose's Rose, do you read it? Have you ever?
We don't have it up there. Yeah, okay.
She will often be transformed, sound or something on around her or a smell, and they show her, she's an adult, a mother, and all of a sudden she's this little girl dancing around with all lollipops and sugar plums dancing over her head. And they do that in that comic for both her and her husband. And then other times, something will trigger and transform her into a biker gal. And then she pops back into,
reality.
but it's just that experience that you have, you know, and they do such a beautiful job of depicting it. You would like the show because they have a son named Pasquale, and he has a guardian angel that looks just like him and comes around. And every so often, if the guardian angel feels that Pasquale's in trouble, he becomes this huge, giant warrior of an angel. Yeah, it's
Cool.
It's a really, really good comic.
Did your mom tell you, or did you hear me tell Mom this morning? Was it ice cream? Is that what I told you? I woke up this morning with my fists clenched because I was holding the dimes that me and a little boy from across the street, when I was a little girl, and we were saving our dimes, we were saving money so we can buy an ice cream, and we were waiting for the ice cream truck to come, and I was holding my dimes in my fist, and when I woke up, like, this is like, ow!
So funny.
I don't even know who this little boy was in my dream either. But we were across the street at Uzetta's house.
Must have been Matthew.
No, it didn't look like any of them. It was funny. And I don't know if it was the Meet Me in St. Louis movie last night being so...
That movie will trigger your childhood too.
Well, I think it was just so sweet and innocent and simple time, you know what I mean? And family and, you know, community, neighbors, I should say.
Seen on that, it's from a book, and I'd love to find that book.
Yeah, they did say it was
Because movies
based on
always
a
leave out a lot of the story of the book.
I bet there's a whole lot more with Agnes and Tootie in
I'll bet there
the
is.
book.
That'd be fun to learn more about them. Hear more about that Halloween, who that Mr. what's his name was that they were so scared to go to.
Yeah.
Why? Because he was beating his wife with a red hot poker and killing
Dead cats. Just piled in a box.
I always think about Judy's graveyard.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend whose dad was a mortician up in Lemoore, and she would have funerals for her Barbies, put them in a a shoebox, and that was, you know, she'd have the whole grade, they, you know, the whole service, and she'd embalm them and everything. And she said people would, you know, if they didn't know her dad was a mortician and they lived, it was the house and the church and the mortician were all, like the house was here and across the street was the church and the mortician and mortuary, I mean, and they would, yeah, that's what her life was. So it was no, but if they didn't know, they think that poor little girl, what's wrong with her? She's burying her dolls. Judy.
My friend Amber talks about when she would sneak out at night when she was a young teenager. She would come home and find all of her dolls hanging by nooses around her room with a little note from her mom, "We have to talk."
That is clever. That is very clever. You never snuck out at night, did you, Mom?
No.
You were always on the second floor.
I was always upstairs. The only time I had the ideal room for it was when we lived on Orchard. I was only 6 when we moved out of there. I had a room with a private entrance to the outdoors.
Did you? On Orchard? Okay, now on New England, though, that was the house that you said that guy broke in. What was that? Tell me that story.
It was right after the first year your dad and I were married.
Okay.
We had an apartment up on Alexandria, and we lived up there for about 6 months or so, and then Mom wanted to go back east. She had a 3-month visit planned back to see her brothers.
Oh, wow.
And she was concerned about her house being left empty, and so to save us rent and help us out, we decided we gave up our apartment, we moved into the house to take care of it while she was gone. Dad was going to City College at night. Well, actually, we both were a little bit. We were both working days and going to college. He was taking regular, all 5-day-a-week classes. I had 1 class a week that I went to. But we were in the house for about the first months we were there. The first months we were there, everything went fine. That's when your dad and my brother got into their argument.
When you guys lived there at the house?
Yeah, because Don came in telling me I wasn't keeping the house clean enough. We weren't scrubbing the floors and vacuuming and everything, and they had to blow up about me, about Don checking on me.
Yeah.
And I could understand part of it, but by the same token, it was like your dad told Don that if he ever wanted to talk to me again, he had to go through him. And Don being Don, just that was it, you know. But the second month we were there, Dad was smoking, and because he started smoking by then. And I think that's probably what caused it. But anyway, we woke up in the middle of the night when my house was full of smoke, and the couch downstairs was on fire.
Oh my gosh.
We got the couch, we got the fire out, we called the fire department, got the fire out, talked to the mother's insurance man who was a member of the church, and he came out and we replaced the couch and the carpet in the living room. There wasn't that much other that was
Thank God.
that was destroyed. But then after that was over, it was only about 2 weeks after that we were in bed one night, and actually somebody was playing around between my legs.
Oh.
And I felt that hand, and even newlywed, I thought it was my husband, you know.
Yeah.
And I just reached down, and I suddenly, as I reached down, I realized that the arm was going the other direction.
Oh, wow.
And it's amazing how clearly you can think at a time like that. I just kind of dropped my hand a little bit, you know, like I was still asleep. And I thought, you know what, if I scream or holler, I may have a knife or a gun or something, that wouldn't work. So what I did was when I dropped my hand down between the dad and I just started pinching him on his butt.
Yeah.
and I always have had long fingernails.
Yeah.
And I just kept pinching until I got reaction out of him. And he turned around and he saw the guys
Silhouette.
silhouette in the window. It was in the upstairs front bedroom.
Yeah.
The guy, well, what he did was he turned around and he saw it in he said something, but it sounded like a roar. And the guy,
What are you doing? Is what he said. He
what's
said.
going on, or something
Yeah.
like that. And the guy, I remembered, by that time I saw the silhouette in the window too, and he just said, how's it going, and he went out our bedroom door, the front bedroom door, down the steps, past the front door, through the living room, the dining room, the pantry, the kitchen, the back porch, and out the back door. He knew where he was going. He knew his way through that house.
Who the heck was it?
We called the police. They came out. They told us that they'd caught a guy a couple of blocks over later on that night. Unfortunately, your dad wouldn't stay in the house anymore. We moved in. We packed up that night and went over to Hazel's and spent the rest of the time there. And I got in big trouble with my family because I wasn't taking care of the house like I promised. And I wasn't picking up the mail because I didn't drive at that time, you know. And your dad wouldn't go back over it. And so, but anyway, that's what happened that night.
I didn't know all of that.
It was,
But they found the guy.
they found the guy, but what really bothered me was, I said, you realize my mother's been living here by herself?
Yeah.
And that's what scared me.
Yeah.
I mean, we handled
Yeah.
what was going on then, but that always worried me, and we told Mother about it, and she just kind of passed it off, you know, like, well, won't happen again.
How long did she live there after that?
She didn't close up the house till after we moved up to San Maria, so it was quite a while after.
Yeah, 10 years later or so.
It was 10 years later. Well, no. Yeah, that was right, because...
Well, you said that she lived in an
No,
apartment when Pam was there.
she moved out, no, that's right, because she had the apartment. She had
So in
the-
only a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah, so it was only a couple of years.
These are little sayings that Grandpa Keck used to say.
'Twas midnight on the ocean, not a streetcar was in sight. The sun was shining brightly, and it rained all day that night. The barefoot boy with shoes on stood sitting in the grass, and all the fishes in the trees were huddling in their nests.
Nonsensical. And then there was the other one
Yeah.
that the Hermans taught me a little bit different than Grandpa did it, but do you remember that one?
I'm trying to remember how it goes now, because this morning I had it, right now I'm a little
Well,
blank.
Pam said she thought she'd learned it bright one morning in the middle of the night.
It was in the middle of the day one night is the way I learned it. Two dead boys got up to fight. Face to face,
Back to back, they faced each other.
drew their guns and drew their swords and shot each other.
Okay.
A deaf policeman heard the noise, and he arrested the two dead boys. And there's another line.
And if you don't believe my story, ask the blind man at the corner.
Yeah.
He saw it all.
He saw it all.
And there was something that you were telling me, just tell me the name of it so I can try to research it, of what he used to say about Maggie
It
and
was Maggie and Jiggs at the Pearly Gate.
Jigs, J-I-G-S, like
Yeah,
that?
J-I-G-G-S. Maggie and Jiggs were a comic strip.
Oh, okay.
And Jiggs was a little short guy in a suit and tie and everything, and Maggie was his big, tall, wiry, bossy wife.
Okay.
And it was Maggie and Jiggs at the Pearly Gates. And I can't remember at all how it goes. I would love to find a copy of it.
But it was something that he was requested to say.
He was his favorite reading, and he would say it at church, at parties, at gatherings. They were always asking him to
to recite it. Let's see if I can find that.